I arrived at the Harmony Grove Community Center 5 minutes early that fateful Tuesday morning, vanilla latte warming my hand, already mentally ticking off the agenda items. Client calls could wait. This monthly HOA board meeting was the one thing in my perfectly scheduled life that still felt like a battlefield disguised as polite suburbia. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like they always did, casting that sterile glow over the beige walls and the mandatory, approved plant list posters. The air smelled of cheap coffee and desperation. I turned the corner into the small conference room and nearly dropped my coffee. There she sat, Deborah Caldwell, our exalted HOA president, perched in my chair at the head of the table like it had always been hers. Her perfectly coiffed blonde bob didn't move as she tapped on her phone, stilettos clicking against the leg of the table. Her lips curled into that signature condescending smile, the one she reserved for residents who dared plant the wrong shade of petunias. "You're early," she said without looking up, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "But that's fine. You don't need to be here anymore." The words hung in the air like a bad smell. I blinked once. Twice. The kind of silence that precedes a car crash. My fingers tightened around the latte cup until the lid creaked. "Excuse me." My voice came out steady, but inside something cold was forming. Deborah finally looked up. Heavy makeup, overlined lips, and that pastel pink blazer she thought made her look like a CEO instead of a glorified lawn police. "You heard me, Laura. You're no longer on the board. The association has decided to streamline. Your position as treasurer is redundant now. My niece Madison will be taking over. She's got fresh ideas." She made air quotes around fresh ideas and let out a tinkling laugh that made my teeth hurt. Madison, 23 years old, fresh out of college, and the only qualification being Deborah's blood relative, was suddenly the financial genius of Harmony Grove. This wasn't just a board seat. This was 10 years of my life. 10 years of balancing the books when Deborah wanted to improve the entrance fountains with her cousin's landscaping company. 10 years of fighting her ridiculous fines against single moms for having one too many garden gnomes. 10 years of being the invisible glue holding this petty fiefdom together while she played queen. She tilted her head sweetly. "You'll need to clear your files by end of day." "Oh, and that little succulent on your desk? It's cute but a bit tacky for the official image." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stared at her, feeling that familiar snap inside. Not rage yet, but the cold, surgical clarity of someone who'd been underestimated one too many times. She thought this was checkmate. She had no clue I'd been building the guillotine for years. You want a funny part? I wasn't even supposed to stay in Harmony Grove this long. I told myself 5 years max, just long enough to pay off the house, stack some savings, maybe flip it and escape to a condo without a single rule about flagpole heights. But one volunteer shift turned into treasurer duties. One favor for the entrance beautification committee turned into me ghostwriting the entire annual budget report that got Deborah her fancy President of the Year plaque. One, "Can you stay late to audit the reserve fund?" became, "We just assume you'll handle it." And I did. I showed up during heat waves when the rest of the board called in sick. I ran the orientation packets for new residents, edited the violation notices, cleaned up after their potluck disasters, babysat grown adults' egos over mailbox color disputes, and still somehow made it look effortless. For what? So I could get dethroned by a trust fund toddler whose biggest accomplishment was surviving a semester abroad without losing her designer sunglasses? Let me tell you something no one likes to admit. HOAs don't reward loyalty. They drain it. They bottle it up, suck it out of you like a mosquito at a backyard barbecue, then toss you like expired sunscreen when you're nothing but a husk with a polite email signature. I remember the first time they stole my work. It was the pitch for the new community pool renovation. My spreadsheets, my vendor bids, my strategy that turned that mess into a feasible plan. And guess whose name got mentioned in the newsletter? Deborah's. Deborah, who couldn't balance a checkbook if her life depended on it. Deborah, who once told me I was really articulate for someone who didn't go to an Ivy. That was year 3. By year 7, I'd stop correcting people when they gave credit to the board's male members. What was the point? You speak up, you're emotional. You stay quiet, you're complicit. You work twice as hard, you're a threat. You coast, you're lazy. There's no winning when the rules are written in invisible HOA ink. But the most humiliating part, no one really saw me. They'd remember I brought the cookies to the annual meeting, that I fixed the printer when it jammed during violation hearings, that I always knew how to calm the angry residents over grass height infractions. But the late nights, the hours, the grit, that all got absorbed by the pastel blazers above me, like I was just a sponge for their success. So yeah, when Little Miss Birthright strutted into my conference room with her synthetic blowout and called my chair a throne, something old and ugly uncoiled in me. Not rage. Not yet. More like a low, slow burn. A pilot light that had been hissing gas for years, waiting for one idiot with a match. People always said I was organized like it was a compliment, like it was cute. They'd chuckle when I color-coded the share drives, roll their eyes when I double-checked the version history on every violation notice. Joke that I had control issues because I kept backup PDFs of every finalized report since 2012. But it wasn't control. It was survival. You volunteer in suburban America as a woman without a trust fund or a rich uncle on the board, and you learn real quick that your best defense is documentation. So I saved everything. Every email where my budget suggestions got dismissed and later recycled under someone else's name. Every reserve fund spreadsheet I restructured. Every violation notice I drafted from scratch but never got credit for. Every time Deborah said, just between us, before asking me to overlook a rule violation for her golf buddy. I saved the Slack threads, the calendar invites, the internal memos, and those quiet little suggestions that were never officially written down, but always somehow my fault. Hell, I even saved voicemails. I had an entire folder titled, In Case They Snap. It started as a joke. Then it wasn't. And now is an arsenal. That morning, after Deborah kicked me out of my own chair like a dog who'd overstayed its welcome, I didn't pack up my succulent. I walked to my car in silence, got in, and drove straight home. No tears, no drama, no screaming. Just a strange sterile calm like I've been cut open and all the nerves have been scooped out. I sat down on my dining room table with my laptop, cracked open my external hard drive, and clicked into the folder tree I hadn't touched in over a year. I renamed it Insurance. Inside, a meticulous library of every decision that ever mattered in this neighborhood. Many of them signed, dated, and traceable straight back to the incompetent queen who claimed she had no idea how the community funds got misplaced, or why that vendor mysteriously got overpaid, or how the association just happened to dodge that state compliance audit last year. You see, it's not that I didn't trust anyone. It's that I knew them. And now, for the first time in years, I looked at my archive not as a fortress, but as a weapon. There were contracts Deborah's favorite contractor had ghostwritten, expense reports that didn't match the public filings, emails from Deborah herself approving off-the-books community enhancements that violated at least 3 clauses of our state HOA compliance policy. Things like using reserve funds for her personal pool renovation disguised as a splash pad upgrade. None of it would mean much on its own, but together it was enough to make an entire cul-de-sac sweat. And the best part? None of them remembered I had it, because they never saw me as dangerous, just efficient, invisible, forgettable, perfect. I smiled for the first time all day. Let the princess play her throne games. She had no idea she'd just taken the crown off a woman who'd been quietly building guillotines. The thing about holding the match is knowing the second you strike it, everything changes. There's a moment right before the flare, right before the spark leaps in a dry kindling, where your hand is still clean, where you can still put it down, walk away, be the bigger person, take the high road, let karma do its slow molasses dance while you spiral in therapy and eat too many almonds. But I was done with almonds, and karma was too damn slow. I sat in my kitchen, hunched over the glow of my laptop like a war widow sifting through letters. The overhead light buzzing faintly. My cat, Newton, watched from the windowsill with judgmental indifference. My phone buzzed again, probably another passive-aggressive check-in from Deborah wrapped in vanilla-scented toxicity. I ignored it because I had found it, buried in a subfolder labeled Q2 Reserves. Internal only was a chain of emails dated 6 months ago from Deborah, CC'd to 2 board execs, and one guy in legal who'd later resigned to spend more time with his family after a surprise state audit. Subject line: Accelerated revenue strategy, discretion advised. What followed was a clearly illegal plan to repurpose grant money meant for community landscaping in her family's executive rebranding campaign. A campaign that, if memory served, included private consultant retreats in the Bahamas 3 weeks after Madison started her internship. The language in the email was careful, but not careful enough. Phrases like off-the-books realign optics, and Deborah says it's fine, she'll smooth it if needed, were peppered between bulleted lists and timelines. But it was the last attachment that sealed it, an Excel file with fake invoices and real bank account routing numbers, and Deborah's name was all over it. I stared at it for a long time. My cursor hovered over the paperclip icon. I clicked. Then I opened a new message to the State Attorney General's office and every single homeowner in the Harmony Grove email list. Subject: Internal concern. Body: empty. Attachment: Deborah_reserve of misuse.xlsx. Email chain forwarded. Signature still default. Just my name, no pleasantries. My finger hovered over the mouse. My breath felt shallow. Was this it? Was I about to blow up a decade of my own networking, my references, my HOA reputation, my non-compete with the neighborhood? Would this make me untouchable, a whistleblower, a liability? Probably. But I also knew this. If I didn't click send, I'd be complicit. And I was done being part of the quiet. My thumb clicked. Whoosh. The message disappeared like a stone dropped into deep water. No dramatic music. No thunderclap. Just a gentle ding of message sent. I stared at the screen, at the empty white space of the email body, at the nothingness left behind after the bullet leaves the barrel. My stomach churned. Grim satisfaction clawed its way through the dread. I didn't know what would come next, lawsuits, blacklisting, or a very tense call from Deborah. But I did know this. I hadn't just pushed over a domino. I'd yanked out the cornerstone of their whole little empire. They say HOA power is about rules. It's not. It's about who can make who sweat. Somewhere across the subdivision in Deborah's McMansion, with chilled, sparkling water and chairs that cost more than my first car, a board meeting was dragging its feet through another performative slideshow about Q4 synergy alignment. The usual bullshit symphony, buzzwords, graphs, nodding heads pretending to care. Deborah, queen of cufflinks and broken promises, was halfway through a half-hearted pitch about cultural consolidation, whatever the hell that meant in a neighborhood that fined you for flying an American flag longer than 3 feet, when her phone buzzed on the table. So did Madison's. Madison glanced down. One new email, no subject line, just an attachment and a forwarded thread. She opened it. First her thumb stopped scrolling, then her whole face did. In a room full of pastel sharks, it takes a lot to make someone visibly recoil. But that's what happened. A flicker of panic cracked through her professional veneer like someone had pulled the emergency brake on a speeding golf cart. Deborah, she croaked. Deborah didn't look up. Madison didn't ask again. She just picked up her phone, stood, and walked behind Deborah's chair, leaned down like she was whispering about stock options or merger terms. She handed the phone over. Deborah glanced at it with the impatient detachment of a woman who thinks she's seen it all. And then she read the subject line, internal concern. By the time she got halfway through the attached invoice doc, her face had gone the color of old printer paper. Jesus Christ, she muttered. The room hushed. The slideshow froze on a slide that said brand trust metrics. Deborah closed the email, looked around the room, and for the first time in years, didn't perform leadership. No spin, no smile, just raw, concentrated calculation behind cold eyes. She handed the phone back to Madison, then said quietly but firmly, "Call her immediately." Across town in my tiny townhouse that smelled like burnt coffee and betrayal, I sat barefoot in leggings and an oversized hoodie, pretending to scroll through job listings I knew I wouldn't apply to. And then my phone rang. A known number. I didn't answer right away. Let buzz. Let buzz again, then click decline. Seconds later, a text came through. Deborah Caldwell would like to speak with you. Can we schedule a call ASAP? I stared at the screen. A part of me, scarred, trained, HOA conditioned, still twitched, still flinched like I was the one in trouble, like I was about to be scolded, silenced, erased. But a different part of me? She smiled. They weren't calling to find me. They were calling to contain me. I wasn't disposable anymore. I was dangerous. HOA gossip spreads faster than mold in a damp basement. By Wednesday morning, the neighborhood was a live wire. Too quiet in all the wrong ways. The kind of silence that makes your spine itch. No blaring Bluetooth speakers from backyard barbecues. No obnoxious throat clearing from the enforcement committee. Just lawnmowers ticking like nervous typewriters and next-door statuses flipping from green to way like rats abandoning a sinking ship mid-mow. I didn't show up to the emergency meeting, of course. No one asked me to, and I wasn't about to volunteer myself for a parade of tight smiles and faux concern nods. Instead, I monitored the chaos from my laptop, sitting cross-legged on my couch, coffee in one hand and a live feed of the community email chain in the other. The first sign something had shifted came in the form of a bland, evasive group message about internal restructuring and compliance review. Then came the anonymous tip that landed on the local Facebook group, complete with partial screenshots and a fiery title that included the phrase luxury pool fraud. It wasn't mine, but it was definitely someone riding the wave I started. By Thursday, the trickle had become a flood. Auditors from the state, regulators poking around the reserve accounts, 2 canceled welcome wagon luncheons, an emergency town hall that lasted 11 minutes before everyone realized no one was answering actual questions, and Deborah. Oh, Deborah was suddenly very quiet. Gone were the stilettos and performative power walks through the common areas. No more claiming the throne. No more pink folders with her initials in rose gold foil. Her blinds stayed closed. Her calendar went mysteriously blank. I heard from a still loyal neighbor that Madison cried in the community bathroom after the legal team pulled her into a closed-door meeting with 2 unfamiliar men in dark suits. Poetic, really. But I'll be honest, it wasn't as sweet as I thought it would be. I had fantasized about revenge for years. The dramatic downfall, the crocodile tears, the public unmasking of everyone who ever stole from the community fund and called it leadership. I thought I'd feel powerful, righteous, triumphant. Instead, I felt uneasy because it wasn't just Deborah unraveling. It was everything. The neighborhood I'd poured my adult life into was cracking like old porcelain under pressure. The whispers were growing. Have you seen the Q2 numbers? They say she might face fines. Someone said the grant money came from state taxes, federal level. The same neighbors who used to treat me like a dependable utility now whispered my name like it was a curse word or a legend. I was either the hero or the witch, depending on which cul-de-sac you were in. Some people sent me private messages of solidarity. Others blocked me altogether. Even my next-door inbox was a war zone. Half recruiters for other volunteer gigs, half reporters from the local paper. One woman from a state oversight board left a voicemail asking if I'd be willing to go on record. I didn't call her back. And Deborah? Silence. No call, no email, just a black hole of HOA panic pulling everything in. I stood in front of my fridge that night, eating cold leftovers straight from the container when it finally hit me. I didn't just throw a grenade at my enemies. I lit a match in a field soaked with gasoline I helped pour. And part of me, some strange, guilty, shattered part, was still loyal to the thing I just set on fire. They didn't send lawyers first. They sent people, familiar faces, the ones who used to breeze past my desk without so much as a nod unless they needed something last minute or beneath them. Like fixing a typo in their violation notice or covering a resident call they were too hungover to take. Now, they showed up in my inbox like regretful ghosts from a Christmas special. Warm greetings, loaded apologies, and an uncomfortable amount of exclamation points. Hey, just checking in. Rough week, huh? We'd love to talk over coffee. Our treat. No pressure, but Deborah's been asking about you directly. The audacity of it made me laugh out loud over my morning cereal. Then came the real visit. She showed up in person. Deborah Caldwell. Ding. Master gaslighter. Purveyor of false praise and dead-end promises. In a Navy power suit, probably worth more than my car. Standing in the hallway outside my townhouse like a door-to-door politician, holding a paper bag that turned out to contain 2 overpriced croissants and an almond milk latte, my usual, according to some long-forgotten assistant. She probably barked the order at someone on the drive over. She didn't smile when I opened the door. She looked tired, sweaty, almost human. "May I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside barely. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I drafted 1,000 budgets she took credit for, and stared at each other over coffee that neither of us drank. "I want to apologize," she began, "for how things played out." I raised an eyebrow. "That's cute. Is that the line legal approved?" She winced just a little. "I didn't know Madison was." "Well, we're handling it. Right by throwing her under the bus." "You're all still pretending you didn't help build the bus," I said flatly. Silence. Then she tried again. This time, shifting tone, the executive pivot. "Less regret, more strategy. You have leverage. That's clear. We're prepared to offer you a package. Severance, certainly, but also consulting status, discretionary bonuses, reputational cleanup, NDAs, of course, but we can make this a win-win." She said win-win, like it didn't make my skin crawl. "You people are unbelievable," I muttered, standing up to pace. "You ignored me for years. Used me like a damn printer. And now that the house is on fire, suddenly I'm your most important asset. We can't afford a public battle," she admitted, her voice low now. "The residents are skittish. The state board's asking questions. If you cooperate." "Cooperate," I echoed, turning on her with a bitter laugh. "Is that what you're calling it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like begging." She stood too, then dropped the PR tone. "Let something ugly slip out. You're not untouchable, you know." There was the veiled threat, the real Deborah. And I smiled slow and ice cold. "Funny," I said, tilting my head, "how I became valuable the moment you started sinking." She didn't speak after that, just nodded stiffly, collected her jacket, and left without touching her croissant. I watched her from the window as she disappeared into her SUV, knowing full well this wasn't over. There'd be more calls, more offers, maybe even more threats. But something inside me had shifted permanently. They weren't speaking to a volunteer anymore. They were speaking to a force. And yet, the strangest thing lingered after the door shut. I wasn't happy. Not really. Not satisfied the way I thought I'd be. Power is lonely when it comes too late. Because once you've stopped needing their approval, there's no one left to impress. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Collapse in the HOA world isn't some dramatic explosion. It's a slow, grotesque peeling like rot working its way up the spine of a once pristine fruit bowl. Everything glossy until it's touched, and then it caves in. The first headline broke on a Tuesday morning. Just a quiet little piece buried in the local paper's community section. Family-run HOA faces internal scrutiny over misuse of reserve funds. No names, no accusations, just a suggestion. By Thursday, it hit the state news wire. Then the regional blog. By Sunday, it was trending on a neighborhood Facebook group. They didn't say my name, not once, but Deborah's. They said it with teeth. Influencer HOA president implicated in misappropriation of community funds. Privileged or corrupt. The downfall of a suburban girl boss from boardroom to bathroom breakdown. The fall of a neighborhood princess. The throne she'd so proudly claimed became a punchline. Residents started pulling out one after the other like rats sensing the ocean. A major landscaping partner paused collaboration indefinitely. 3 homeowner accounts I once managed personally filed breach of ethics complaints. The State Compliance Committee launched a full audit citing deliberate obfuscation in past financial reports. And Deborah Oh, Deborah was drowning. She did what they all do. Blamed communication failures, distanced herself from bad actors, offered transparency without actually revealing a damn thing. But it was too late. A leaked internal email revealed she'd signed off on alternative budgeting from Madison's campaign. The board launched a vote of no confidence. She didn't even make it to the quarterly homeowner meeting. She resigned before she was pushed. The press release used the word retire, but everyone knew better. I watched it unfold from my townhouse. Wrapped in a blanket, Netflix paused on some forgettable show I wasn't really watching. There was no party, no champagne, no wild cackling as I danced on the ashes of her empire. Just silence, the kind of silence that echoes inside your own ribs. I had one. They were humiliated, dismantled, and ruined. But the wreckage felt bigger than revenge. Because that community center, those hallways full of synthetic air and toxic meetings, I'd once believed in it. I lived in it. Poured my time, my youth, my goddamn health into it like it meant something. And now, just another headline in a news cycle. Just another cautionary tale. People started reaching out again. Recruiters for other volunteer boards, ex-neighbors, even an old board member who once told me I needed to smile more now wanted to grab coffee and chat about future possibilities. I ignored them, not out of spite, out of exhaustion. Because when the tower falls, everyone wants to know how you pulled it down. No one wants to talk about what it cost to stand under it for 12 years and pretend it wasn't crushing you. This wasn't victory. This was aftermath. The community center looked smaller when I walked in. Isn't that always the way? It was the first time I'd stepped foot in that lobby since the day Deborah sat at my desk with her patent leather entitlement and declared herself queen of a kingdom she didn't understand. Now, 2 weeks later, the throne was ash. Security barely looked up as I scanned in with my old badge. It still worked, which told me everything I needed to know about how fast this association was falling apart. Or maybe they left it active on purpose. A final olive branch. A final mistake. The reception desk was unmanned. The waiting area, once full of sleek furniture and fake optimism, looked abandoned, like a stage between acts. I walked past the glass conference rooms. Half were empty. The other half were war zones, whispered arguments, red faces, HR reps trying to put out fires with broken policy manuals. Deborah's old office door was open. Her throne was gone. Just a hollow desk and a coffee stain on the carpet that looked suspiciously like it had been scrubbed in a hurry. No flowers. No fairy tale ending. I didn't pause. I didn't gloat. I just went to my actual office and opened the door with that same quiet hand I'd used every day for a decade. The air was stale. No one had touched anything. My succulent was still there, drooping but alive. A miracle in and of itself. I packed slowly, not because I was sentimental, not because I needed time, but because I could, because no one was rushing me, no one was breathing down my neck, asking for one last favor, or pretending to forget my name. The chaos around me buzzed like static. Footsteps, raised voices, the sharp scent of panic in the air. But in my office, it was still peaceful, almost. As I slid the last folder into my box, I found it. A post-it note I'd written to myself during some long-forgotten all-nighter. Don't let them convince you this is the prize. I smiled. On my way out, I didn't say goodbye. Not to the receptionist. Not to the enforcement team with their stage concern. Not to the former board members suddenly too afraid to make eye contact. I didn't slam the door. I didn't post a selfie. I didn't broadcast my power. I just left. Quiet. Complete. As the elevator descended, I allowed myself one final thought. One truth, clear as glass and sharp as truth always is. She said she took the throne. All I did was forward one email and watch the castle burn. Outside, the late afternoon sun hit my skin like something clean. I walked to my car with no board title, no plan, no HOA leash left around my neck. But for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was free. And if that freedom cost me peace, so be it. Let them rebuild with the ashes I left behind. Or better yet, Let the ruins stand, a monument to the woman they never saw. The state investigation wrapped up 6 weeks later with a quiet settlement no one talked about in public. Deborah paid a fine that barely dented her pool fund. Madison stepped away to pursue other opportunities. The board got new bylaws that actually require transparency. Residents started smiling at me again in the grocery store like nothing had happened. But I knew better. The rules were still there. The grass still had to be exactly 2.5 inches. The flags still couldn't fly past sunset. The mailboxes still had to be that specific shade of beige. Only now the queen was gone, and the kingdom remembered it could bite back. I kept the folder, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Every time a new neighbor complains about a violation notice, I pull it out and smile. Because the real joke of every HOA story isn't the petty rules or the power trips. It's that the people who enforce them always forget. The quiet ones keep receipts. And one day, those receipts cash themselves. I sold the townhouse 3 months later. Bought a little place on the edge of town with no HOA in sight. No more monthly meetings. No more violation letters. No more pastel tyrants pretending community spirit while picking your pocket. Just me, Newton, and a yard where I can plant whatever damn color petunia I want. Sometimes late at night, I still get the texts. Old neighbors asking if I have any advice on the new board. I never reply. Let them figure it out. Let them learn the hard way that the throne is always one forwarded email away from ashes. And if another Karen ever rises, well, I've still got the backups.